What's going on, guys? Doc Danny here. I want to thank you so much for listening to the PT Entrepreneur Podcast. One of the most common questions that I get is, how did you start a practice in a gym? And because of that, I've put together a course called the Gym PT Blueprint, which shows you exactly how to start, run, and grow a successful practice in a gym. If you're a new PT, if you're a new grad, if you're a PT that's just started a practice in the gym, you're not making more than $12,000 a month yet, this course is perfect for you. It'll teach you how to set it up correctly. It'll teach you how to market yourself correctly, how to sell correctly, how to actually build a true business and not just a little side business that maybe doesn't take you anywhere and change you and your family's life long term. So if you're interested in this model of a practice, guys, head to drdannymate.com/products and you can take a look at the Gym PT Blueprint and everything that goes into it at that location. Thanks so much for listening.
So here's the question. How do physical therapists like us, who don't want to see 30 patients a day, who don't want to work home health, and have real student loans, create a career and life for ourselves that we've always dreamed about? This is the question, and this podcast is the answer. My name's Danny Mate, and welcome to the PT Entrepreneur Podcast.
What's up, guys? Doc Danny here with the PT Entrepreneur Podcast. And today we've got a friend of mine, Kingsley Yu, on, who's Kingsley Yu with Kingsley Yu Physiotherapy based out of the New York area. This is going to be a fun one because Kingsley has actually made the trip down to Atlanta to spend an entire day with me and listen to me ramble on about business for 8 hours. There's other people besides him that have done in the country, but this is the first one I've been able to get on my podcast since we started back up. So Kingsley, how you doing, man?
I'm good, Danny. Thanks for having me on.
So before we get into kind of you and I and what we've kind of wanted you to do since I saw you last time, I want to get into number one, what how your practice is set up and how long it's been going on, and a little bit of the kind of nuts and bolts of that. So explain to everybody what your practice is, how long you've had it, and then the basic setup of it.
All right. Well, so my practice I've had my practice for about 5 to 6 years. And, the way it's kind of set up is that, it's a concierge-based service. So what I do is I basically set up shop wherever my patients are. So I see them in home, I see them in office, I'll see them in their gym or in their country club, wherever there's basically available space. I've also been working on just getting into, some of a little bit of the CrossFit setting. I've basically become the in-house PT where, at the box where I belong. And that's basically my deal. I mean, I spend a lot of time driving to and from appointments, but, I think it's been a worthwhile venture.
Well, so, all right, when you first got into that, what made you decide you wanted to go away from the traditional practice setting that you were in to set up a concierge practice?
Really, it was just the want to spend more quality time with our patients and give them more of what, we can do, to lead them in the right direction.
So, all right, what type of practice setting were you in before you opened your practice?
I had worked in, just in a private outpatient practice. We were seeing, a volume was tremendously high, seeing anywhere from like 35 to 40 patients a day.
Damn.
Mm-hmm.
That's a busy day.
That's a busy day. Yeah, that's a busy day.
This is a big frustration, man. I mean, I think people are in the same place as you frequently, right? They get to a certain point, they start seeing huge volume, and it seems like there's only a couple options, right? It's like, okay, do I go down the manager role? Do I go down the clinic director path and start to manage some of this stuff and maybe do some things you aren't that interested in? Or
Sure.
do you just, stick with that and grind it out and see 30 people a day? So when you got to that point, that frustration point, did you ever think, man, do I even want to be a physical therapist anymore?
I guess you start to question whether or not, you question, the effectiveness of what you've been taught and what you've been trained to do. And, you kind of look back at it and you say, well, I don't know, was I doing them a disservice? I mean, unfortunately, I think it's kind of the way that the system is, structured.
Well, totally. And yeah, I mean, I think when you see that many people, it's very natural to second guess your own skill set. Did you ever get to that point where you're like, dang, do I suck as a physical therapist, or is it just because I'm seeing 40 people a day?
Yeah, well, I mean, sure. I mean, it's just like, maybe the outcomes probably weren't weren't the best, or weren't what you expected, or I mean, our time was so limited with each patient, directly.
Absolutely. So you decided, all right, I'm going to make this change. Did you already have people that you'd talked to that were like, hey, wherever you go, like, I'm down, I'm going to work with you no matter what? Or was it, you just kind of jumped in and you had to build kind of patient volume from scratch?
Well, I mean, I kind of jumped right into it and built a patient volume from scratch. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately at that time too, had a non-compete agreement, so it's just
right.
kind of, that's something that you have to, put in the back of your mind as well.
So, okay, how long was that, and what was the radius?
That non-compete was a year long, and it was a 10-mile radius.
So that was like the whole city of New York.
Well, I mean, I'm based out of Long Island, but still covers a large area.
Yeah, it covers a big chunk of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right, when you start out, so this concierge kind of approach, how long did it take for you to get to where you were seeing a decent amount of people? So until you got to where you're seeing like 10 patient visits a week on average.
Let's see. I mean, when I initially started, it was kind of, this was like a venture that I had pursued just because it gave me some flexibility with the schedule. And, at that time, we had young kids at home, and it's just trying to figure out how we would, in terms of just kind of like raising the children and watching for the children. Initially I had kind of just spent, more of a role, I guess, as a dad and then a clinician, and I had worked on building it up. But it didn't take me probably about a year or so just to, I would say just to get about 10 consistent patients per week. And that was plenty because, just with the amount of dedication and time that, that I was spending to just, help raise like the young kids before they got to school age.
Oh, you sound like you're like my boy Joe. I mean, I know you listen to Doc and Jock podcast, and
sure.
And Joe, it's my co-host on that podcast is he's in a very similar position, right? So it's sort of one of these things where his wife has opportunity with military pension and healthcare, after retirement and all this stuff. Like, this really good opportunity that he's taking the role as the stay-at-home spouse, parent, and does weightlifting, coaching, and all that stuff on the side. So you kind of did that for a while, and you had your practice on the side. So that was probably like really good fit for you in that role.
Oh, absolutely. It was definitely a great fit. And I mean, I was just all, pumped up and ready to go once they were all in school. And I was like, listen, I can now really just kind of dial in and focus on building up the practice.
Yeah. Well, it's such an organic way to do it too. And I get this a lot. People ask me, hey, do I have to jump, straight in and open a practice exclusively? Like that's what we did, because I didn't really have a choice, but there's plenty of people that can do something like this and have 10 to 15 patient hours a week and still be able to raise their kids. I mean, how awesome is that?
Oh, it's great, just to have that flexibility and, just having the opportunity once in a while to pick up the kids from school and
right.
just hang out with them a little bit. I mean, it's definitely, that's valuable time.
All right. Well, fast forward now, you're full time. You're seeing, I think you told me average of like 30 visits a week. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, totally full time, 30, one-on-ones. That's a lot at this point. Right.
Oh, for sure.
Okay. And sometimes, you almost kind of have to be careful what you wish for. Kelly Stretch told me this one time. He was like, be careful what you wish for, because as soon as you get really busy and people know that you're, helping people and you're good, you're going to get like really busy and it's going to become problematic in terms of other things. So at this point, now that you're busy, your established schedule, what's your biggest frustration in business right now?
Biggest frustration in business right now is it's actually now it's just just actually finding more free time for myself to grow the business even further, or even just having more free time to spend with the family. I mean, right now I'm just with the 30 visits and all the travel time between, I don't have a lot of time to grow, to work within the business and, or to work on growing the business.
So when Kingsley was down here, we did a full day of, he saw a few patients with me, and then we kind of took a look at his business and started, breaking some things down at opportunities that maybe he needed to look at. And one of those was the potential to have a satellite office, or really like a fairly consistent office in a CrossFit gym. And so I gave him accountability items, and I want to get into those on the podcast because I think, look, I have a business coach, and they give me accountability items, and if I don't get those completed, I have to pay $100 per, and there's 3 items each month that I have to do, right? So the emphasis on me is, I need to do it, but also I'm also paying for that person's time to tell me these things, so I'm totally going to do it. But I gave you a couple, and some of them were not necessarily easy. One of those was to try to get yourself into a gym that looked like it had sort of like an on and off PT practice there. So tell me about what you were able to do with the CrossFit gym in your hometown that was probably the biggest and busiest one, but looked like they had like some part-time practitioner there.
Well, I mean, I wish I could tell you I had made a lot of progress on that. I had, done some research into just determining the amount of stability in there, and I physically have not gone to the gym or spoken to the owner yet, and I'm still working on getting like someone to that we're acquainted, that I'm acquainted with, who can get me an introduction to with the owner. I've only spoken to just a couple of members who are friends of mine, and it doesn't seem like there's a very strong presence. They don't seem to really know who is there providing the physical therapy. So, I mean, unfortunately, it looks like I owe you $100 at least right now.
Bro, I'm about to reach through Skype and strangle you right now. Now, look, here's the other thing. There's another gym that you had talked to as well about subleasing space and, potentially have an office there. So now with that gym,
yes.
How did talks with that owner go, and what does that facility look like? Does it actually look like a viable option for you?
It certainly does seem like a viable option. I've spoken with the owner, and currently he seems like pretty receptive to the whole idea of subleasing a space. I think the challenge right now, or initially, it's just kind of it's a smaller facility. So in order to kind of build up 4 walls and get some air conditioning in there, we're going to have to do some work on that. But it sounds very promising. I think that's something that I'm definitely that we're going to pursue further.
Now, are they willing to do that build out?
I think that if we can come to the right agreement, they're definitely willing to do the build out.
Now, by right agreement, do you mean a certain amount of lease commitment time on your part, or are they wanting you to pay for part of these additions?
I think it's just the right lease agreement.
Okay, good. Because never pay to improve somebody else's facility. That's a terrible. It's not the worst idea, but man, that's their shit. They need to do that. You can always leave, but you're not taking that office with you. Right. So that's a big one. And the other thing too is you kind of talk about time, and this was a big part of our conversation. And one of the reasons I want to have Kingsley on here was because I want to give you guys an idea of working through some of these business problems and what this looks like in real life. Because everybody that owns a business has problems that develop, and they're not going to end your business problems, but they're slowing you down from progression. And one thing that we talked about was the fact that, so he's got 30 patient visits a week. That does not include travel time. So driving to people's houses or wherever they're being seen, and he's trying to batch it as best he can, but man, that adds up. So having a facility, a space that people could then come to, and most likely would be willing to do that, could instantly turn around and get time back, right?
Oh, for sure. No question.
Now, so for you, the other thing we talked about was potentially looking at getting some sort of part-time admin or virtual assistant. Did you look into any of that?
Yes, I did. I looked into a service, to get a virtual, in terms of a virtual assistant. So I'm planning on actually making some implementing some changes starting in September when it comes down to having a virtual assistant, and I don't know if I'm skipping ahead, but also with online scheduling and booking.
Yes, so they go hand in hand, right? And so one of the other suggestions we had for Kingsley was the fact that he's basically scheduling and rescheduling everybody. So now, there's multiple places where we can get time back, because time is such a valuable asset. Like we all have the same amount, and what we do with it is can make a huge difference in terms of the progression of our business and or what we want to spend our time on with our family, right? So maybe it has nothing to do with your business. Maybe you just want to get some of your damn time back. Sure. And you're totally down to spend like the money that it costs to have, some sort of software and a virtual assistant, because now all of a sudden you have 6-7 hours more in the week. And then now all of a sudden we get a space where people come to see you, and man, you're saving however many hours in travel. And now, dude, like you've got some time, man. You got time to do other things. So the recommendation we had was with MindBody. So have you looked at MindBody?
I have. I've spoken with MindBody.
So
I've spoken with MindBody, and they seem to have a great service. I mean, it's just, it seems like it's real seamless and smooth.
Well, it's the best one that I've found for right now. It's HIPAA compliant, but people can self-schedule. There's other options out there for sure, and there's one coming up that's it's going to be in beta test next month with a friend of mine, Eve Gigi, called PT on Demand is the name of the software, which is specifically going to be designed for cash-based practices, which should be a really cool software, but more to come on that as they develop it. But for now, MindBody is a good fit. And the big one is people scheduling themselves, because what I thought was so fascinating about your business is that you don't have a lot of new patients, but you have a lot of people that are they're down with Kingsley for life. Like they're going to be working with you forever, man. And so you have like such an interesting, I guess you have a sort of a new patient problem, but you have an amazing retention ratio. So, most of the people that you book, do you think that they would book themselves?
If I start implementing this, yes. I mean, I've actually started to notify some of them, and it sounds like, they're absolutely down for using that service. So, I think that definitely would save a ton of time.
Oh, big time. I mean, and not only that, but you have your kind of documentation there in place. Now, have you thought, all right, if I have a virtual assistant, or even you can have a real person, part-time person that's in that area, what are some of the things that you think to yourself, man, I can't wait to offload this?
Well, I mean, some of it would, I would just love to offload some of the things that I'm trying to do on social media, or even just kind of getting, just posting things like hopefully some new blog content and video content that I'm going to put out soon.
So you're looking to offload more of that kind of social media content management piece?
Yeah, for sure. And just even, even when we have new referrals and new contacts, I mean, just at least that way, they could have, I guess, maybe more of the, the difficult conversation that you would have with a new patient in terms of like how the whole process works with the cash PT, practice and or some of the out of network questions that they may have.
Yeah, and so right now, so people call, what's the process for them to get in touch with you, to work with you? Like, what does that go to your cell phone, or is that going to a VoIP line? Like, how is it set up?
Right now it's going to my cell phone, and I've also had I've also been given some recommendations to look at some other programs, I guess, that would generate kind of like just generate a special number that could be just forwarded to my phone, so that it would just give me an indication of whether or not this is business related or if this is a personal phone call.
Right. So there's different VoIP options, which are, basically you can forward calls if it look like a different number to that number. You can also have it connected to a assistant. So there's another potential option for you is answering service. So you can get these answering services, and they're not that complex. They're not going to have the insurance conversation with somebody. And then, frankly, you probably would want to have that with them anyway initially. And but what they can do is never miss a call, right? So like if that rings and it goes to voicemail, what if they don't leave a voicemail and they're like, you know what, I'm just going to go to somebody else, versus that call gets answered and they take a message and they let them know you're going to have, Kingsley will call you and as soon as he can, he's busy with the patient right now. And, but it just helps you on the front end so much more.
Oh, absolutely.
There's a couple of those, like Call Ruby is one of them. Oh man, there's another one. We actually started using this very early on before we got a office manager that basically answers all these calls. But that's a huge one, man. I mean, think about it. If you call a business, let's say you call, I don't know, whatever kind of business, and you don't get an answer, the likelihood of you doing business with them goes down. Versus if somebody answers, it's a real person, and then they can get your information. So going forward, all right, let's look a year in the future, because I want to know where you want to be. So in a year, what would you like to see in terms of where your business is?
In the year, I mean, I would like to see me with actually, just one or two physical therapists, that are my employees. Hopefully within one or two satellite offices.
Now, let's take a step back, because we're going to talk about hiring process here. Because I had this question that got posed to me. It was actually the new PT that we just brought on. One of his friends, who may be listening to this, has a practice in I think it's Toledo, somewhere up in Ohio. Maybe it's Cleveland. I forget. Somewhere in Ohio. And he's been out of school for about a year, and he's looking to hire some other like kind of subspecialties like massage and some sports-specific training, but no admin staff in place. None. Now, that would be like building a house on a shitty foundation, because here's what's going to happen. And this is why, and this leads to a whole nother conversation of, do you want to be a single provider that has a lifestyle business where you just, you limit your schedule, you charge more per session, and you get more free time to do whatever you want, but you're going to leave it like that? Or you want to have like staff and grow a larger business?
Right. Well, yeah. So that's definitely one of the questions you posed me the last time when I was in Atlanta. So, after giving that second thought, I mean, I decided that, I want to just develop and grow the business and have staff. Yeah,
totally. Then the number one thing you should be looking at doing, besides a office space in the next 6 months, is a legitimate administrative, staff member. And that could be virtual still because of the way your office is set up. But if it was me and I was looking to do something similar, I would look for somebody that was local that I could hire, that could work from home, and answer, and you could get a VoIP line forwarded to them that could do all of this stuff with you, that you could train really well on having that conversation about, hey, what is your insurance? What do you actually owe? Because when you go to bring other providers on, now they're going to compound your problems. Mm-hmm. So right off the bat, like anybody listening to this, if you're at a point where Kingsley is, where you're rocking a single person clinic and you're too busy for your own good, I know it's not a revenue producing employee, but man, is it important, way more important than bringing on another PT that you think is going to offload your schedule. And they will, but they will also take your time with training and questions and, just business related issues. So that admin has to be somebody you got to find. Now, do you know anybody that may be a good fit for that, or anybody in your community that you're aware of?
Sure. I mean, there are actually a couple of, I think there's about like two or three people I know pretty closely who could probably be very helpful with that, and, have experience with, definitely have experience with taking care of, inquiries and stuff like that, about being new patients. Sure.
Now, when you look at hiring, so this will be, have you hired anybody yet at this point?
No, not at this point.
Okay, first hire. Yeah, first hire is always, it's hard because you don't really know. You know what I mean? And you've never hired anybody. I remember our first hire actually worked out really well. She's still our office manager. But what we did was we went through our social media channels. We didn't advertise to anybody. We just literally put it out on social media. We didn't even boost it. Like, hey, we're hiring. We're looking for an office manager. If you know somebody you think would be a good fit, send us an email. And we got like 6 people that were recommended to us. And that may be a really good option for you to do as well.
That's a recommendation.
Yeah, and it's because they're familiar with you. They know your business. They already like you. But that could be really, really, really helpful before you look to bring another PT on. Now, so time frame wise, so all right, let's get some accountability items on here so everybody can hear it. So your next accountability items are going to be, so number one, implementing mind body. All right, so get that infrastructure set up. Get an office, dude. Like, get it done. Get your sublease squared away, whatever it is. Get yourself an office so you can start saving some time with people coming to see you. If it's centrally located, and then you need to hire an administrative person, whether it be part-time initially or full-time or whatever it is, and train that person because they need to be aware of what your systems are and what you want done before you go and you bring somebody else on that's going to have a whole bunch of other questions for both you and for that administrative person.
Okay.
And if you don't do it, everybody on this podcast, however many people listen to it, they're all going to email you, and they're in 6 months they're going to know where you at, man. Because like here's the thing, right? So many of you right now, if you're listening to this and you don't have a practice, you think to yourself, I cannot wait until I've got a full schedule of 30 people, right? But when that happens, as good as that is that you're generating revenue and you're making good money, then you have a time problem. You have well, shit, how do I get my time back? You know?
Absolutely.
And it can be just as much of a frustration, you know? So, for you, I think those are the big kind of 3 things to focus on.
All right. No pressure, Danny.
No pressure. We'll line it up. I wanted to do this one. I was literally looking forward to this because, this is basically like just a modified coaching call. You know, I mean, like, it's just so important to have some sort of outside view of what's going on, right? Because when you're in it and you're 30 people deep a week, you're right, dude. You're picking your kids up. You got patients here and there. You're leaving after dinner to go see somebody. You're waking up early to go see somebody. You got a couple hours with your wife in there. But other than that, you're just grinding, man. You're just busy.
Oh yeah, I mean that's for sure. I mean that's for sure. No, I definitely need you. I needed you to to make sure to keep me on track here because all these accountability items that you're giving me are just definitely gonna help me set my sights on what I have to do.
Well, Kingsley, let's do this. I want you to if you have any advice for anybody out there that's looking to set up a practice kind of similar to yours. All right, let's say like a concierge-based practice or a cash practice where they have like one location but maybe still do a little travel. What advice would you give them in terms of a lesson maybe you learned the hard way that you wish somebody just would have told you differently?
Well, I think that one thing is just you don't have to set up everything so that it's perfect before you start. I think that holds some other clinicians back. I mean, they feel like they have like everything's got to be set up, your website, whatever it is, just your business plan. I mean, you have a little bit of an idea, but just don't be afraid to pull the trigger and start it up.
That's such good advice. There's a book. It's called Ready, Fire, Aim, and it's the idea of like you just described where people they'll just like stress over the subtle nuances of, man, which shade of green is most important for me to have on my website? And like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Because you're not doing shit. Like you need to just go and do something first and then test it out and see what works. That's such a good piece of advice. I think anybody, anybody that's listening to this, if that's you and you're sitting there right now and you're thinking, damn, he's right. I'm really trying to organize my Google Calendar and you haven't seen a single person. Stop doing that, right?
For sure.
Yeah. Now, all right, last question in terms of any book that you've read that just really resonated with you. I feel like business books are just such a cheap way of learning and such a good way of learning. What book would you recommend for somebody that's either just starting a practice or somebody that's got a fairly new cash practice?
Well, I just started the E-Myth.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, I'm not reading it. I'm listening to the audio book in the car as I'm driving between appointments and such. But I think right from the beginning, I mean, that book really just kind of strikes a chord with you, and it's definitely a real motivating and motivating book.
I think you're two or three people I've interviewed so far, the podcasts that haven't come out yet, that'll be over the next few months, have referenced the same book. And if you haven't read E-Myth, you got to do it. We actually, early on in our business, the first business coach that we ever had was through E-Myth. They actually have a business coaching service, and at the time they had a small business one. There was a pilot program.
Sure.
Predominantly they work with like large businesses, so we were very lucky. We got to go through all the kind of E-Myth structure of setting your business up correctly, because as you read that book, there's kind of the story of this lady that owns a pie shop, and
Right.
and she just starts like making all these common mistakes and just getting really frustrated. And what happens is there's a lack of organization and the idea of that your business is going to be bigger than what you initially thought that it would be. So that's awesome, man. I hope that you really enjoy that and you take some good lessons away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's providing like a nice, bit of structure, and it's also definitely, like I said, very motivating, and it just kind of, keeps you focused.
Well, Kingsley, you're the man. If people want to reach out to you and they want to pick your brain about what you guys are doing, or they want to, just see what you're up to and check out your website and stuff, where can they learn more about you guys?
Thanks, Danny. Well, they can find me on. Hold on a second. I just lost my headset here.
Oh, you're good.
All right, so they can find me on social media, Instagram at Dr. Kingsley PT. That's Dr. Dr. Kingsley PT. You can also find me on Facebook at Kingsley U Concierge Physical Therapy, or my website. It's KingsleyUPT.com.
Perfect. Guys, reach out to him. Kingsley's the man. I really enjoyed spending time with him when he was down here. He's got a daughter who's going to be an awesome vet one day. She was down at the Auburn vet camp. I didn't even know they had vet camps. But down at the Auburn vet camp, and he got to hang with me for a day in Atlanta, which I had a lot of fun with. So, Kingsley, dude, thanks so much for your time. Guys, this is the PT Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Dr. Danny Mattei. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Danny.